Hey everyone, how's it going? So last time what we did is we added this middleware right here, which checks if the user is logged in or not, using this very simple function that checks if the session properties are there. If the user is not logged in, it will redirect them to the login route. If they are logged in, it will call next, which essentially means it will go to this part right here, and it will render the home page. Now, I forgot to clarify this, and the reason we're doing it in a separate function like this, and the reason this is good, is because by doing it like this, it means that any time we add a separate route for a different page or something like that, we can just pass this in there if we know that they aren't supposed to access this page without being logged in. So we wouldn't have to duplicate any of the logic which checks if they're logged in. We won't have to do any of this again. All we have to do is just pass this in before we actually handle the route itself. Okay, that will become very clear to you shortly. As soon as we add any more routes which require us to be logged in, you'll see what I mean by that. But just know that this will save us a lot of trouble going forward. So you remember that last time when we added this, it redirects us to the login page, and we saw this error because we don't have anything which handles the login route yet. And when I say route, in case you forgot or maybe I didn't explain this, route is basically, think of it like a page. So when you go to this is the login route. If I went to the burger route, it would be like that. So a route is basically the page, if you want to think of it like that. Okay. So we're actually done with the middleware file, so you can go ahead and close that down. We don't need that anymore. If we want to add more middleware in future, we can just add it to that file as a separate function. But for now, we don't need that. And then what we're going to do is create a route for the login path, because that's what it's trying to access right here. So we're going to create a new route that handles the login situation. So let's go ahead and create a new folder. So in the root of our site, we're going to create a new folder, and this will be called routes, like that. And then we'll create a new file inside that routes folder called loginroutes.js. Now, the reason I'm appending routes to the name is because we could call this login.js, but we are going to have multiple files called login. We're going to have a login.pug file, which will be the template one. We could end up with a login.js file, which is the JavaScript file attached to the page. And then if we have this one called login.js as well, it means if we want to differentiate between the different files, we essentially need to look at the file path, see where they're stored in order to know what file it is. So calling it login routes, it just saves us some confusion when we look at this name alone. So what we're going to do is essentially go back to app.js and copy all of this and then paste it in here. So there's a few things we are going to keep in here. We're going to keep express, we're going to keep app equals express. Now we don't need the port because we're not going to be starting a server from here, so get rid of that. We don't need the middleware. And then we also don't need this line in which we create the server instance, so get rid of that too. We do want to keep these two though. But there is another line we're going to add up here, and then we are going to change this part at the bottom as well, but first we're going to add something up here. So underneath app equals express, we'll say const router equals express dot router, like that. So this is essentially getting us the router that comes with the express framework. And then going down to the bottom here, we're going to change this slightly. Instead of calling app.get right here, we're going to call router.get. Because this page right here is essentially handling the route. It's not handling traffic to the server, which is what app's doing. It's essentially just handling the route. Because you'll see how we're going to forward the request to this route from the app.js file in just a second. But for now, make sure you change app.get to router.get, because it's going to be the router here which is handling the request. So keep this as just a slash. That essentially means it's the top level of this route. We don't need this middleware.require login because we've already done that, and plus it's the login page. We know they're not logged in. But then keep this part the same, and then we are going to change some stuff in here. We'll just get rid of the payload. We don't need that. And then we'll say res.status equals 200, and then render, and then we're going to render a page called login, which of course we don't have yet. But we'll create that shortly, and then get rid of payload because we just removed that. We don't need to send any data to the login page. Great, and then there's one more thing we need to do, then we're done. Just one more line. At the bottom there, we're going to say module.export equals router, like this. Now make sure you don't accidentally write module.export make sure it's module.exports with an S, okay? So what we've done in this file is we've created the router, which is what this line does, and then what we've done is configure the router to handle requests at the root level to do this, okay? And then we just export it from this file so that when we use this file in other places, it will do this basically, okay? So let me show you what that means. So go back to app.js, and don't worry, there isn't a whole lot to do. We're actually nearly done with this. So what we're going to do is declare our routes. So underneath the app.set views part, I'll just do a comment. This will be the routes, and then underneath there, I'll say const login route equals require, and inside there I'll say dot slash and then routes and then slash login routes, like this. Alright, so we've declared our login route in this const right here, and then underneath that we'll just actually tell the app to use it. So app.use, and then we'll just say slash login like this, then put a comma, and then just pass in this login route constant right there, and that's it. Now it should handle the login route. So we need to restart the server. So come down to your terminal, press Ctrl+C, and then start it again. So I've started it. There are no errors. Great. So if I go back to the home page, it should redirect me back to this page anyway. Okay. And great. You see an error, but this is actually good. So we're seeing an error saying that we don't have a page called login, and the reason that's good is because it means it's hit this line right here from our login routes, which is trying to render the login page. That's what this part's doing. It's trying to find a page called login, or a template if you want to call it that, inside the views folder. But because we haven't created that yet, that's what the error is telling us. But that means that it is doing this. So yeah, essentially we have our site set up so that when you try and access the login page, it will try and render the page. Once we create the page, that's what you'll see here. But at the same time, if we then go to some other place, we get an error because we haven't handled that route yet. So essentially, we've put all the steps in place to handle the login route. Of course, minus the actual page itself, but this is great progress.